Welcome, everyone. We are Chiara and Anna from SendGrid, and today we're going to be talking about email strategies that will allow you to achieve 40 times ROI. Who from the audience knows about SendGrid? Not bad, not bad. SendGrid is a Texas company. I see Jose from Texas over here. We were founded in 2009 in Boulder, Colorado. These are our three founders, Tim, Isaac, and Jose. And these are the three founders that went through the program in Colorado in 2009. And still today, they're very, very busy building the company. They're actually coding. SendGrid is an email platform. We have two products. One that was built for developers, and the other one that was built for marketeers. The first product is our email infrastructure, and that's the one-to-one operational email. So we can be talking about welcome email, password resets, and confirmation of a purchase. It's a very easy to integrate platform, and we have analytics and reporting so you can see how your email is going. The second product is our marketing product. That's a one-to-many promotional emails, the typical marketing and newsletters. We have a very easy to use interface and also a brand new editor. If you haven't tried it yet, I recommend that you go and try it out. SendGrid is a customer communication platform. Sophia mentioned some of our customers, so you can see Booking.com, Airbnb, Spotify, Uber. But we also work, these are massive customers that send a lot of emails every month. But we also work with smaller companies, and we help them out with their growth, but also with their email needs. Chiara and I work with those smaller companies, and we manage the SendGrid Accelerate program here in Europe. The SendGrid Accelerate program is our startup program, and it's there to support early-stage companies. We do things like giving you access to our platform. We give you access to our internal mentors, so we can help you out with your business. And we also give you access to our network. So we are quite connected around the globe, so we hope that we can, at some point, give you some good introductions. These are some of the partners that we work with here in Europe. You can see from accelerators to organizations that help out the ecosystems. And we not only help the companies that go through those programs, but also the ecosystems that they are part of. Like, for example, doing this thing with Google Campus here in Madrid. Now I'm going to hand it over to Chiara, and she's going to go more in detail on how email can help you achieve 40 times ROI.
Thank you. So, yeah, the title of this presentation is about generating 40x ROI on your emails. There's a couple of things you need to keep in mind when you're looking at doing this. According to the Data and Marketing Association, for every $1 you spend on email, you can get a return of between $38 and $40. In order to do this, there's three main things that you need to look at. The first is who you're speaking to and who's opening your emails. The second is what content you're sending them and what links are they clicking on. And the third is where the recipients are located. In addition to this, in order to optimize the emails that you're sending, you need to keep in mind the device that they're using, the browser that they're using, and the email client that they're using. We're going to look at this in more detail. So what we're going to cover is the following. First, before I begin, I want to remind you of the differences between transactional and marketing email, because this is super important regardless of whether you're a marketeer or an engineer setting up the infrastructure. Essentially, the differences, as Anna mentioned before, is that the transactional email are automated emails that are going out based on actions taken on your platform. So password resets, registration confirmation, receipt confirmations, and then on the marketing side, any kind of promotional email that you're sending out, more content related. So what we're going to look at today is firstly how to authentically grow your email list, which is super important. And we know that in early stage, you're often in a position where you need to acquire those first customers. You may be approached about buying a list of potential recipients. And this is a big no-no from our perspective. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Then we're going to look at some strategies for better customer segmentation, really understanding who it is you're communicating with, and making the emails that you send personalized in order for them to be more engaging for your recipients. Anna's then going to go on to A/B testing and how you can use this to send more successful campaigns. And then we're going to have a quick look at email deliverability and understanding the basics of that. So to get started, stuck. OK. So authentically growing your list. As I mentioned before, having good email addresses is ultimately going to lead to the success of your campaigns. Sending to bad addresses is going to obviously have a lower engagement rate, but it also means that you could potentially affect your reputation. So in order to authentically grow your list, there's a couple of strategies you can look at. The first is optimizing your email opt-ins. So make sure that you give your users or potential customers the option of opting in across all channels. You can see here an example of Birchbox. There's a clear button that says subscribe, and that's where you're calling their attention to click and subscribe to your newsletter. Don't ask for too much. At this stage, all you really need is their email address. If you start asking for their name, their address, and loads of other details, you're going to create a barrier to entry. And these are all things that you can ask for at a later stage. And then finally, you can use discounts or incentives to have them sign up. So you can see here in the case of Birchbox, you can get an extra 50 points or use a discount code. And this is typically on the B2C side. However, on the B2B side, you have an amazing opportunity to share content that is valuable before you even have them sign up as a customer. So here's an example of SendGrid and HubSpot. They're one of our partners. We created a guide with them. And in order for anyone to download this content, there's a form they need to fill out where they provide their email address. They then receive the full content rather than the guarded version, which is what is on our website. So you can do this and actually become a thought leader in your space prior to having them as a customer. They'll come to you for the content, and then from there you can start engaging with them through newsletters. Make sure that you have multiple opportunities to sign up. So it's not just important to have a subscription widget on your website, but it's also important to have it on your blog, on the social media channels that you're using. Essentially give them as many touch points as possible where they can subscribe to your newsletter. Using pop-ups is another option. Personally, I don't really love pop-ups. I find them quite intrusive. But you can see here there's an example by Rover where this is an unintrusive and engaging pop-up. You click on Spin to Win, and you have the option of winning a discount before you actually sign up. So what they do here is they incentivize you to sign up to their newsletter, and then you have someone that's already engaged because they're going to probably make a purchase as a result of the discount that you've provided. You can use landing pages for segmentation. So if, for example, you have a clothing website, and you have a landing page for men's clothing, and you have a landing page for women's accessories, when someone signs up through that landing page, you already know what they're interested in. And that means that you can immediately start segmenting and personalizing the information that you're sending to them through email as a result of the data you've gathered at that point. And then using rewards for current subscribers. So Uber has a good example of this. For every user that you bring, they give you and that new user $10 off their next ride. This is something that obviously a lot of companies do, but it's extremely efficient and something that you can consider. So we've had them opt in at this stage. Now the next step is to get them to confirm their email. This is really important. It's going to allow you to validate which email addresses are actually good addresses. So it has them double opt-in to receiving the content. And at this point, you know they're genuinely interested in receiving the emails you send. Unfortunately, particularly with rewards, often people will put in an email address that isn't their actual email address they use on a regular basis. And so it might lead to low engagement, or it might be spelt incorrectly. So that's something to keep in mind. And confirming the email address is going to allow you to have a clean database of addresses. As you can see here, this is an example of Airbnb's confirmation email. It's very personalized, so it's hi, Jen, first name. There's a very clear call to action, so it's a massive button, confirm your email. They're not going to get lost along the way. There's no distractions. And so you'll have them take the action that you need them to take at this point. Obviously, you can include your social buttons. It's never a bad time to have people share information about your business. And then finally, you can see there's an email preference button at the bottom. And this is a best practice that we recommend. So having a preference center is essentially putting the the power in your recipient's hands. They can decide how often they want to receive emails from you and what type of content they want to receive. For example, here you can see there's the option of switching to a weekly email. So maybe this company was sending a daily email and it's too frequent and you can switch to weekly. You can also manage the subscriptions. So in the case that you're sending a newsletter for every city you operate in, having the option of unsubscribing from the cities that aren't relevant is going to make your recipient feel like they're really getting personalized content and they're in control of how many emails you're sending to their inbox. So we've had them confirm their email now, and the next step is to start sending the content. So the first email they're ever going to receive from you is their welcome email. And it's so important to make a good impression at this point. Flipboard has a really good example of this. They sent this email 1 minute after I confirmed my email address. And what they're trying to do with this, as you can tell, is better understand who I am and what content I want to be receiving from them. So you can see they're asking me if I'm interested in world history, street art, if I'm interested in receiving information about food and wine. By clicking on these, they're going to have that information about me, and they're going to personalize the emails I receive moving forward based on what I've clicked on in this initial welcome email. Another option is to have a welcome series. So this is essentially a drip campaign over a period of time that you see makes sense for the product or service that you're communicating about. This is an example of Spotify. They have very clear call to actions in each of those. And you can see that it's simple, informative, and they're keeping me engaged with their platform right from the start. Once you've sent that first email, and they've opened it, and they've read it, and they've clicked on it, you now have to start thinking about the content that you send. So developing valuable content is extremely important, and it's essentially what's going to keep your recipients engaged over time. We recommend having a subject line of between 3 to 5 words. It's considered the optimal length of a subject line. And you can see here the example by Medium. The subject line wasn't 3 to 5 words, but it was actually the headline. So Chris Sacker's advice to founders: become the best storytellers. Very personalized. They know I'm interested in tech. They know that I'm interested in reading this type of content. And they grab my attention in the subject line with that title. They have a great example of using imagery, and it's consistent with their website. So Medium's design I personally love in general. And you can see that they've used that. They're consistent with their design across their platform and the emails that they're sending. And they really took the time to understand who I was and what I liked and what I was interested in. So in order to really understand who your customer is and send personalized emails, we need to segment the data that we have about them. Treating your users the same is actually going to be more damaging over time than it is useful. So it's really important to take the time to look at the activity. So how often are they logging into and interacting with your product or service? Their engagement, so who's opening your emails, who's opening all of them, who's opening none of them, who's opening some of them, and understand how to engage with each of those segments individually. And then the demographics, so understanding where they're located, how are they different from each other, and how do they interact with your emails based on the demographics. And finally, the type of email that you're sending to them. So are you sending transactional email, or are you sending marketing email? Or are you sending an in-between, which we'll look at a little later. So now I'm going to introduce Jen. Jen is on our community development team. She's 36 years old. She lives in New York. She works at Zengrid, so she works in tech. She has an active lifestyle. She likes good food. She likes traveling. She has a dog. She has a range of interests. You might be wondering why I'm telling you this at this point. I'm telling you this because it's really important to understand your persona. So this is an example of a persona, and all the emails that she receives from the company sending her newsletters, they've understood this about her, and they're basing the content that they're sending her on this information. For example, Jen was using Swarm. She was looking for coffee near New York. And this is a great example of hyper-segmentation through in-app activity. So she was using the Swarm app. She searched for coffee near New York. And that same day, she received an email from Swarm saying, hey, we're going to challenge you to checking in every time you drink coffee for the next week. And if you do that 3 times in the next week, you could potentially win a month of free coffee. Not only that, but Swarm shared this information with Foursquare, And Foursquare then sent her an email, a newsletter the next day with the subject line, the 17 best iced coffees in New York City. So they're onto her. They know that she loves coffee. They know that she's looking for coffee at this time because it's probably really hot in summer in New York. And so she has an article about the 17 best iced coffees. Again, it's an example of them understanding what she's interested at that point in time and sending her relevant, personalized content. As we said before, Jen likes restaurants, so she's a customer of Open Tables. She uses the app frequently. And this is an example of an email she received from them, actually saying, hey, Jennifer, this is your list of personalized recommendations based on what restaurants you've visited in the past. So we can see an example of a personalized subject line. The recommendation is based on her use of the product. And finally, it's location-based. So they know she's in New York, and they've sent her recommendations in the city. I mentioned the gray area email before. This is an example of that. So Jen is active. She uses Fitbit. And you can see that this is her weekly kind of statistics update. So this is all of her activity for the week. She's taken way too many steps. And on top of understanding the transactional information based on her use of the product, which is what they're doing with these statistics, they're sending her recommendations based on lifestyle topics. So they know that she's healthy and she wants to be healthy, and they're sending her 12 recipes to make her chicken dinner a winner. This email is a gray email because it's both transactional and marketing. And the internet service providers actually consider this a marketing email because of its promotional nature. So this is something to keep in mind when you are sending the emails that are kind of an in-between. I'm going to hand it over to Anna to tell you a little bit more about how you can test your user base and different strategies that you use with them.
Thanks, Gara. So we saw about segmentation and the importance of segmentation. Another great and important topic is A/B testing. So why is A/B testing critical for success? We can all agree that French fries and onion rings are not the same thing. So some people will like French fries more than onion rings. What A/B testing does is it allows you to identify what your audience likes and what they're going to react better to. We can test a lot of things when it comes to A/B testing. We can test things about the content, like, for example, the subject lines, what they were going to react better to based on the subject line. We can test things about the design. Will your audience like a blue background better than a white background? Or we can test things about the timing. Will they prefer to receive their email on a Monday morning before they start work? Or will they prefer to receive an email on the Friday before they go home on the weekend? In my opinion, a great example of timing when it comes to emails is Netflix. I don't know if anyone in the audience uses Netflix. I don't know how they do it, but they're ridiculous. They know every time where I'm going to go to sit down in the couch, when I'm preparing popcorn so I can watch a movie. So I normally receive an email on Monday about a TV series that I might like, because maybe in the night I want to relax and watch a TV series. And then on the weekend, I always receive something about a great movie that I should be watching. So great example of timing emails of Netflix. We know things that you can test, but how do you test it? The first thing that you need to do is to create a test batch. So you need to grab your contact list and get a sample of that list. Once you have that sample, like, for example, of 40% of the list, you can do a split test. So you can send the template A to 20% of that sample list and template B to the other 20%. And then the only thing that you need to do is to monitor very closely the opens and the clicks on that campaigns to see how your audience is reacting. This is a great example of what A/B testing looks like at SendGrid. So here we can see that we chose the test type for the subject line. So we're going to see how our audience is reacting to, in this case, 2 versions of emails. The first template is going to be called Puppy Adoption Day, and we're going to send it, as I said, to 20% of the audience. And the template B is going to be called Happy Puppies Need a Home, and that's going to be going to the other 20%. Then in this case, we do the test size, and we decide to do a 10% of the contacts. So we're going to, in this case, send it to 5%, and the other 5% the template B. Afterwards, we're going to select the winner version. What is it going to be based off? It's going to be based, in this case, on the open rate. So how many times our audience is opening that email. And then finally, we're going to do the duration. The duration, what it means is how long it's going to take for that test before we send the winning version, in this case, it's going to be on the open rate, to the rest of the audience, so the near 90%. What is very important that we do is that when you do A/B testing, please only test one variable at a time. If you're going to test the colors, the content, and then also the timing, you don't going to know if your audience is reacting to the content, or to the colors, or to the timing. So it's very important that you keep it simple, so that way you can determine what your audience likes the best. I'm going to hand it over again to Chiara, and she's going to go to talk about delivery basics.
I don't know if this is, yep, okay. So understanding delivery basics is important regardless of whether you're sending pure marketing email and you're on the marketing team, or you're setting up transactional email. This is the very, very basics, but I figured it made sense for us to touch upon this to give you an idea. And so there's three main concepts I wanted to look at. The first is understanding the ISPs, so the internet service providers like Google, like Yahoo, like AOL or Outlook. They're the ones deciding on the inbox placement. So they essentially set you a reputation score based on your sending practices that determine how your delivery rates are going to fluctuate over time. Your reputation score is something that you can see through most email service providers. They will give you an idea of what your reputation score looks like, but you can actually check this externally through sender score tests like return path or using sender score. And essentially, this is going to help you understand what your reputation looks like from the perspective of the ISPs. Then, when you're setting up your email, and as you scale, it's important to consider your use of IP. So when you set up a free account with an email service provider like SendGrid, you're typically put on what we call an IP pool, which is a shared IP. So if Anna and I are sharing an IP, she decides it's a good idea to buy a list of 1 million recipients that she's never spoken to before and sends out 1 million emails, and they get marked as spam. There's a very high chance of her practices affecting my deliverability and my reputation score. So as you scale, and particularly on the marketing side, it's important to consider setting up a dedicated IP. And what this will do is essentially have you be fully in control of your reputation right from the start. And we can talk about this more in Q&A afterwards if that's interesting. So I have a question for the audience. What do you think the likelihood of your email infrastructure being set up incorrectly is going to lead to you having delivery issues? And these are the options. Does anyone have the answer to this? Shout out. 92? 92? Well done, Tom. Yes, there's a 92% chance of that happening. And so setting up your infrastructure correctly is essentially making sure that you white label your domains, your IPs, and your links when you set up, and essentially creating transparency between you as a sender, the email service provider that you're using, and the internet service providers. Making sure you do this right from the start is going to help you protect your reputation. And again, we can go into more detail if you have specific questions around this. So I wanted to give you a little bit of insight into what statistics you can expect when looking at deliverability and trying to measure your engagement. Essentially, the key stats that you would look at for engagement are your open rates and your click rates. And you can see here that there's an example of an email sent, and this is what our dashboard looks like with SendGrid. An email was sent to around 260,000 recipients. 225,000 of those were delivered, and there were 21,000 bounces. So this is a very high percentage of bounces, and this is probably due to those email addresses being bad addresses. This could be because it's an old list that hasn't been cleaned over time, which is something else to consider. So if you collect addresses over time, it's important to look back on them and make sure you clean them regularly, because someone that signed up to your product or service 5 years ago might not be interested in it anymore, or their email address might no longer be active. So the bounces are representative of bad addresses that you're sending to. And then you can see there's the number of unique opens. And you can also look into more detail of like bounces, invalid emails, unique opens, click rates, etc. So for engagement, I would say focus on your open rate and your click rates. And that's going to give you a good idea of how engaged people are. With marketing emails specifically, and this varies obviously by sector, so it depends on what sector you're operating in. It's very business specific, but this is kind of a general guideline that you can use. So with open rates, we say that a 20% open rate is considered a very good open rate, highly engaged. People are interested in reading the content that you're sending, and they're opening it as soon as it gets into your inbox. When you reach 5%, something needs to change. And this could just be that they're no longer interested in receiving emails from you, and they haven't unsubscribed. Or it could be that by changing the subject line and making it more engaging, you might have a higher open rate. When you look at click rates, 4% is considered a good click rate. And when you get around 1%, it could be that the content you're sending isn't really relevant. And so you can use the A/B testing that Anna mentioned before to try different things and understand what's going to lead to a higher engagement. Bounce rates, 2% bounce rate is an okay bounce rate. When you reach 5%, you need to look at why this is happening. With your unsubscribes, as long as you stay above 0.3%, sorry, below 0.3%, you're good. And then spam reports, 0.08% spam report is considered a good spam report. If people are marking you as spam, you need to look at why that's happening. It'll be probably related to the fact that you're not sending emails to the right people at the right time and really understanding who it is that you're sending to. So again, these metrics are just general guidelines, and then over time, it's important to keep looking at your specific metrics and understanding how things change specific to your business and to your own email program. So there's loads of information available on SendGrid's blog. You don't need to be a customer to access it. There's all sorts of articles around emails. We write kind of guides about best practices and across a range of topics, both on the marketing and transactional side. And I recommend taking a look at that if you're looking for any kind of guidelines around email. And then if you are using SendGrid and you're looking for support with integrating, our documentation section is amazing, so take a look there. As Anna mentioned before, we're here for the community. We do a lot of work in the community all over the world, and we love working with entrepreneurs. So please reach out to us if there's anything that we can help you with. You all have access to the Accelerate program for being at Google Campus today. So if you're interested, come and have a chat with us afterwards. We can tell you more about the program. And yeah, stay in touch with us because we love to hear how your businesses are going.